Hello, everybody, and welcome to Revolution. As you know, it has been pretty wild few days for people after the election. I don't think I've seen this much emotion after an election in my lifetime, and understandably so. Um, as you know, that Revolution is always working and struggling to have a diverse group of people together who think differently. And so some of our brothers and sisters here are conservatives, and I'd say probably the majority are liberals and Democrats. And then some folks who are outside the United States. We're all jealous right now. Um, yeah, so I've spent about 5, 6, 7 years ago. Um, I started really focusing on bringing divided people together and taking the revolution in the direction of how can we have tough conversations, how can we work together, how can we do this stuff. And I'm going to be real honest about the reason is at the time we were really focusing on these kids in cages and the separations of families at the border and things like that. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, I was somewhat scapegoating the conservatives because I realized, that the president I had voted for, Barack Obama, was a big part of that. He was often called the deporter, was the great deporter, the deporter in chief of the United States. And so I had to, look at that and realize, like, listen, this isn't about pointing fingers at the conservatives or pointing fingers at the candidates. This was something that seemed to be reaching across the aisle, was this how we were treating folks coming into this country. Um, so, I had to realize that my Democrat brothers and sisters built the cages, and then my conservative brothers and sisters were just continuing what was happening. Um, I think it's hard often for us to take a look at ourselves and to take responsibility for ourselves and for what's going on in this country. Um, I honestly have never felt comfortable really being just gung ho for the government most of my life. It's probably because of seeing my father go into federal prison early in life and getting to know so many families and peoples whose lives were affected by that and by the system, uh, no matter who was in charge. So that's always been something for me. But also the Bible and Christianity comes out of being in an occupied territory. And when Christianity started, you know, Judaism was already being looked down upon by the Romans, even though they were able to live amongst them. And then Christianity comes, and then you kind of have this Judaism and Christianity kind of split happening. Um, and so you have these different types of division. You have the government, then you have religious separation and things like that. For me, this is, in a sense, it's almost like how Christians have always lived their lives within division. That's why we go through the book of Galatians the first of the year. Every year as we go through Galatians is because we're talking about what happens when we become divided and when we draw lines in the sands of who's in and who's out. So for me, last night I was feeling extremely disheartened, but I know we're just in the beginning, and I don't know what the future holds. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. But I've seen so many people so devastated on the left, and then some of my friends who are on the right seemed kind of shocked and about how panicky the left are. And I said, well, you have to, I'm trying to have like these constructive conversations with folks and say, well, you have to remember this was said, and I'm worried that like if I lost my Affordable Care Act and my kids, my kids are on a free lunch program, I'm worried about that, and and I'm also having to talk to my friends on the left and say, we have to look at, 60% of America is living paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of them are feel disenfranchised or disillusioned because their groceries have been more and more expensive and their pay hasn't changed. This war that's happening with Gaza, what I personally believe to be a genocide, these things haven't changed. So we have to take a wider look at this, a global look as well. And it's nuances, and everybody has picked sides and different things like that. And I've never been one to want to remain neutral, not when it comes to injustice. But I believe both our political parties, I think we should have more than two, but I think both of our political parties play a part in this injustice. I tried to take some notes last night, and I was a little bit more like worried, but today I was, I've sought out counsel from folks from different walks of life just to talk to them and see what they thought. And I just want to say, like, if you've been a part of revolution over the past few years, that this is the type of thing that we've always continued to prepare for, is to be living within division and to disagree well and to have tough conversations. This is why we talk about this stuff. It's been really disheartening to see how many people I feel like they've given up. But at the same time, I understand that we're all in this sense of mourning right now. We're all going through it. We're all, everybody, a lot of people are feeling mourning. A lot of people are feeling victory. A lot of people are feeling confused why everybody is so divided. I was trying to do some research the last time that we were divided, and I was reading this one article, and I kept thinking, like, well, is it going to say like in the 1960s or maybe the 50s, Civil Rights Act, or maybe Vietnam, or, and the guy goes back and says the last time felt that this reporter felt the last time we were this divided was during the Civil War. And that's a frightening issue. I think what concerns me is that we've become so divided over these politicians, and we've become so loyal to these politicians that we forget one another, that we miss one another's humanity. And we just want to assume the worst, like, oh, well, these people must hate me and my life and my friends and my identity if they did this, on both sides, and I think social media does that a lot, because we're seeing a lot of very radical views. We're seeing a lot of feelings come out right now. We're seeing a lot of hurt people right now. We're seeing a lot of people gloating right now. The best of us isn't always online, folks. But it's tough. It's tough. I put up this, someone sent me this video of my mom singing The Sun Will Shine Again. And what was interesting about that video, though, was that video was shot literally the day after we pretty much learned that my parents were losing everything. And that we were all of a sudden the butt of every joke. Everything my parents had worked for was gone. And that was the song my mom decided to choose to sing. And this person sent the video, and then they said, oh, that was only a clip. I have the full video if you'd like it. And I said, I would love it. And my father, who has been on television most of his life, is just looking down. I mean, you could tell he was shot in the gut. He was just frazzled. But the reason they did this video is they wanted to be able to say goodbye to their community. And so I've tried to share that with some people, but even them are just like, we don't want to hear it. And I get it. I was raised with my mom, who always was very positive, and there were times as a teenager especially where I really was like, I don't want to hear good news right now. I don't want to know I can make it right now, As I've gotten older, though, those words have meant more to me than ever. because it's often that, am I not going to make rent this month? Am I not going to be able to do my work that I love anymore? You know, when you get into these kind of real life situations, it's tough. But one of the things I also want to ensure people too is revolution's always going to fight for people's equality and for rights. For my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, that will never stop. That will always be, part of our purpose. But it will also be our purpose to fight for equality for people who, I think we need to be able to disagree with people and have that and recognize each other's humanity. And I do believe with John Hume that we've got to figure out how to find unity through diversity and continue to work towards that. I think the problem is everybody wants a revolution, but nobody wants to go through a revolution. Nobody wants to go through the suffering and the heartache and the hard work, and none of us really sometimes want to do that hard work. We want a reformation, but we don't want to go through the Reformation. We often don't talk about all the horrific violence that happened during the Reformation and the wars that happened during the Reformation and the killings and the loss of life and things like that. And those are things I don't want. But what I'm trying to say is that when change is happening, when a great change takes place, there will be pain, there will be losses, there will be hurt. There will be confusion. There will be horrific disagreements. There will be misunderstandings. And if we want to get to a better place, we have to be willing to go through those tough times. I'm here today because I remember watching my family fall apart. I remember I watched the whole church abandon my family, the right and the left. I went through that as a kid. It's not something that everyone's had the same thing, but some of my friends have been like, I've given up on church. I'm like, man, the problem with the church is, I'll tell you the problem with the church is that the church is made up of humans, of people. And people are often frightened and scared and don't know what to do. And sometimes they put their hope in politics and politicians and bad leaders and things like that. And that's just humanity. So we need people like Martin Luther's or Martin Luther King's or John Hume's and things like that to continue to encourage us. But this country is so big that we need lots of John Hume's. We need lots of Martin Luther King's. We need lots of Tammy Faye's. We need lots of Malcolm X's. We need lots of Harvey Milks. That doesn't end. So this isn't over. This for me is what revolution has always been about. Is preparing us for when we go into these moments of huge division, when we go into these moments of separation. Again, that's why Galatians has always been so important to me, is because here's this community separated by each other. They're literally killing each other. They're devouring one another. And Paul is coming in and begging these folks to put their differences aside. And that's why he says there's either male nor female, nor Jew nor Gentile, nor slave nor free. We are all one in Christ. There has to become a time where we are able to work with one another and allow each other to see our humanity. That quote I was shared a few days ago by Jürgen, oh gosh, I can't remember his last name right now, but was talking about even when we argue and even when we fight in person, there's a recognition of one another's humanity. We're able to see each other's humanity. So I hope that some of you are able to see that this is what we've been prepared for. This is what I've been continually talking about this, because for me, I was born for adversity. I was born in adversity. Even when I was a child, and my parents were very famous, there were so many times where we had to go, me and my mom would have to take me and my sister out of town because there were threats on our lives and there were bomb threats on us. So, I never lived in an area where it was completely relaxed or calm. I thought, for some reason people want to kill me because of what my parents do. It was a strange way to grow up. And when I went to high school, I was like, for some reason people want to fight me and say horrible things to me because of who my parents are. So, I know what it's like to be targeted. I know what it's like to go through these things. I know what it's like to carry a name that people despise. It's only recently that people have celebrated my mother's life and seen the work that she did, but I know what it's like to live in a world and be misunderstood and have the people you love and care about most be misunderstood. And this is the message that I got from that, is the message of grace, that you are accepted, and that we are learned to show grace and love to one another, and that grace is anarchy, and that we are called to disagree well. One of the things I would encourage everybody right now to do is as a quote from Dr. King, and I've said it many times, is he said, "It is not the words of our enemies we will remember, but the silence of our friends." And so I would encourage you all to encourage one another. It's really easy to get focused on your pain and your loss and things like that, but listen to one another, take each other's advice. Here are ways to help. How can we help each other make it? How can we understand each other better? How can we have these conversations? How can we know that the credits aren't rolling? Through words of kindness, and love for others. And maybe I'm too much of a dreamer sometimes. Maybe I'm too much of someone who hopes too much and expects too much, to think that we as human beings can decide to put aside our differences and realize that maybe some of these differences come from just how we were raised, literally by accident of birth, even just here in the United States, by parents we had and ideas we have and things like that. It's been tough to watch people denounce like Christianity and their faith and things like that, because I don't really think much has changed. We've just seen something different. We've just seen people going in a different way, and people, I see a lot of infighting about people who are angry for folks who sat out this campaign because they felt about genocide. But I have to say, I think we should be encouraged that there are people so moved by the suffering of others that they're willing to say, I can't participate in the system, or I won't play a part in this system. It's tough when you're going, well, they're worried about these people and they're not worried about those people. You know what I mean? And we go, but people are learning to follow their heart and their passion and their convictions. And that's really hard to take when you're going like, well, what about me? But I think we're in a place where we're going to have to not be self-focused. We're going to have to be others-focused, And I get it. I get what it's like to be worried about the future of this country. I get what it's like to be worried about if you're going to be able to pay your rent, if you're LGBT brothers and sisters, if you're there and you're worried about, am I going to lose my marriage rights? Am I going to lose my equality? But know that you have people who will stand with you and fight for that equality every day. But what I'm not trying, I guess what I know I can't do is I can't make everybody happy. I can't bring you peace. I can't do that. But I can hopefully encourage you, to remind you that this is what we've been working for a long time. And we want to solve this problem. I want to see a reformation. I want to see a type of revolution, but I want to see it nonviolent. And the only way to nonviolent it is by learning how to communicate with others better, to learning how to be patient and kind to one another, learning how to love our enemies, how to get those fruits of the Spirit. The love that never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful. The love that endures through every circumstance. Maybe that's asking too much, but that's what I ask of myself. And to be honest with you, I feel a little bit fried right now. I sat and was thinking, I've been working all these years to talk about bringing divided people together, and now I'm just watching people just so divided in my life. So many people I care about just so angry at one another and scapegoating one another, and everybody's got blame and things like that. And it's difficult. It's difficult to watch. It's heartbreaking. So I understand we're all in a real tough situation. And there's nothing wrong with turning off the media and the social media and going for a walk. I pick up my kids every day because I walk to school with them, and it was just and I thought about that long, and I was like, the sun is shining and the birds are singing and the air is breathable. And I was able to kind of live to that moment, and at the same time having to remember that the moment of a lot of my brothers and sisters in the Middle East have no homes to go to, no lives. And I know it's not, doesn't make things better because other people are suffering, but I just live in the reality of my own blessing. But I do know firsthand how divided politics can be. My father doesn't speak to me, I don't talk to my dad. Me and my sister don't really talk. That's not about politics. That's about other issues. But I know what it's like to have division in your family and not to feel like you have much. I'm grateful for my kids. So I'm just saying you're not alone in this. You're not suffering alone. A lot of us are suffering, and a lot of us can't afford to go get therapy or things like that because we've got crap insurance. But we're all struggling, and I asked a conservative friend of mine. He posted some stuff, and I said, it seems a little bit like gloating right now. And he's like, well, everybody else is terrified, so why can't I gloat? But I was like, because we've got to learn to take the higher road here. If we want to see change, if we want to be in a community where we can disagree about politics, not write each other out of each other's lives and abandon one another, I'm like, all you're doing is encouraging those people to say, see, they're right. You know what I mean? It's like we're falling into roles. And I said, don't fall into that role. Let people hurt. Let people go through this stuff. And I feel like that's what we're called to do as Christians, is to continue to love one another and encourage one another to come together and have hard conversations. That's what grace is about. That's what forgiveness is about. Grace is not for people who deserve it. Forgiveness obviously is not for, when Jesus is on the cross, what does Jesus say? Jesus says, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And I'm not, I could try to explain what both sides are seeing, but I just don't even think that would probably fall on deaf ears right now for all of us. So what I want to encourage you to do is know that, you're loved and you're accepted. This is the work that we've been preparing for here at Revolution, is how do we live in a world that's divided, and how do we try to make that world less divided. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this is the time, it's time to try to put this stuff to work. And, maybe be careful of what we're putting into our heads right now, and who we're judging and who we're giving up on. And, I guess the question is it, or do we live in a life where we don't want to bite and devour one another? Do we live in a world where it's more complex than good and bad? Do we want to allow black and white thinking to continue to divide us? Because that's definitely a way to go. It's definitely a way to go. Just trying to look at my notes here. One of the things I wrote last night in my despair was, you'd think I'd learned my lesson to stop pushing inclusion, And then after that I wrote, well, but maybe I heard my mom sing, don't give up, and you can make it too many times. When my dad was given 45 years in prison, my mom came out and she sang this song. I think it was like, I Stand on the Rock. My foundation is the rock of, of Christ, God, the rock of his salvation. It's funny because somebody actually said something about when I put up the "you can make it" thing, and they're like, I stand on sinking sand. I've always been a pessimist myself as well, but I'm, as Dr. Cornel West often said, but I'm a prisoner of hope. And maybe, I was watching The Dark Knight Rises, and part of that underground prison with the big hole in the top where is like, oh, you suffer more when you have hope. Maybe that's it. Maybe we just suffer more when we have hope. But I'm not ready to give up. And I'm ready to fight nonviolently for the equality of all human beings in this world, and for us to continue to work for less suffering in this world. I wish my dad would put politics aside so we could have conversations. I wish he would put politics and theology aside so we could have conversations. I'd much rather him be in my kid's life than be separated over our disagreement in this world. But a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people think they have their limits to love, and I understand that. You got to have boundaries. But my job is to continue to push people's boundaries in inclusion and love and grace. There's stories like the Good Samaritan and the woman at the well, or the story about the extra mile is literally a Roman soldier. When a Roman soldier asks you to carry, when your oppressor asks you to carry a bag 1 mile, you carry the bag the extra mile. That was Jesus' message to how do we treat the oppressor. You go the extra mile with your oppressor. Not so popular thing to hear, but that is Christianity in a nutshell. That is following Christ in a nutshell. That is why we've been called to be Christians and to follow, or followers of Christ, or whatever you want to call it, the way. But that's what we're called to. And as Bono said, love's a higher law. You ask me to enter, then you make me fall. I can't be holding on to what you got when all you got is hurt. So let's not be the people who all we've got is hurt. Let's not be a people of fear. First John says, perfect love casts out all fear. And I think the ground of being, or God, or Jesus is bigger than this. This message obviously has lasted thousands and thousands of years for a reason. And a lot of you have said, well, I think it's white Christian evangelicals that are the problem, but if you look at the people who voted, it's not just those folks who voted. You know what I mean? It's just so easy to scapegoat a group of people and say they did it, it's their faults, they've done it. I mean, evangelicals have driven me crazy most of my life as well, but I just, I refuse to give them that much power over things. And they've also, a lot of them, the few of them have really loved me and shown me grace over the years and given me chances to be able to be this radical when nobody else did. There's always nuances. There's always exceptions to the rules. That's why I've never been a fan of using broad strokes and easy judgments. But I guess the message today is take care of yourself. Let yourself heal. I hope you can practice radical acceptance, which is something I learned in DBT, is that when you're in a really rough time, going through a rough time, that you're able to accept that. I hope that those of you who are more conservative in our community will be willing to show some of us more liberal folks a bit of grace and compassion as well. And maybe we can have conversations and talk about why we're worried and why we're afraid and why people seem kind of intimidated right now by what's happening. I think that would be important. For those are important conversations. Again, as I continue to refer back to my mother, is we would have those political conversations about why, well, why was I so liberal and why was I, and I would sit down and we would talk about health care and go through it together. And I said, well, this is why, here, let's look at healthcare, Mom, or let's look at this issue. And we would, kind of just sit there and lay those things out. And it always helped to have her around for that. My friend Preet Rollins, we have some really great conversations as well, where we're able to really take things apart and not get angry with one another. That's important to have folks like that in your life. But this is we're all in the same boat now. We're all voting in different boats, but we're all in the same boat now. And it's up to us how we're going to handle that and how we're going to treat the other and how we're going to love the other. And at least we can realize that we want the others to be able to eat well and pay their rent and also have medical care and things like that. And I think those are things for us to focus on. But, you know, we all ignore things. We all often will ignore the suffering of others in order to make sure that we are taken care of. That's just the reality of being human beings. You know, that sometimes we just have to go like, you know, I can't worry about what's happening in the Middle East. I'm worried about what's happening right here. Or, you know, I can't help what's going on with this community, you know, because my community is torn up. So this is what we're going to focus on here. And that's what happens a lot in politics, is that we have to exclude the suffering of others. And, you know, so I think if we can have a radical way of looking at that and asking ourselves, have I done that as well? Might be a good place to start. That, you know, we're all humans. We all fall short. But that's just part of our humanity, is that none of us are perfect, and that we all have our own fears and our own insecurities and our own worries about today and tomorrow. And, you know, I think we'll find is that we're just, you know, people are different. That's another thing. It's like how radically crazy. Yes, people think different. People have different experience. People have different thoughts than us, you know. Obviously, right now, you know, people have different thinking. You know, how separate this country is. Yes, people think differently, you know, and there's got to be radical acceptance in that as well. So, you know, take care of yourself. Love your children, love your friends, you know, encourage each other. Um, but I will say, if we do want to see a reformation, if we do want to see a different thing than a two-party system in this country, that doesn't happen overnight, and that is not an easy task. Most of the people that I look up to died doing that work and never saw the end of their work, never saw the completion of what their work was. And some of us are still fighting for those people's works. That is the reality, is that that's hard work. That's sometimes where we have to die to ourselves and love others in that way. And it's not easy. So if we do want reformation, we have to put the work in. If we do revolution, want some sort of nonviolent revolution, we do have to put that work in. And part of that work is also being able to mourn and being able to heal. And one of the things I learned doing nonviolent work and things like that is when you would go into a confrontation, when you'd have these really tough conversations, one of the really important things is the debriefing afterwards, of sitting with folks and having the conversations about what you just saw and what you went through and what you're feeling. That's a big part of it too. And so it's good to have people around where you can have those conversations, where you can go to the bar or the pub or the restaurant and have these conversations and talk about this. But, you know, when you're fighting misinformation, when you're fighting the tradition and things like that, when you're doing that in a non-violent way, you know, you have to have a place where you can go and have a little bit of a refuge, a little bit of a retreat, you know, and a reminder that, you know, it's not these human beings that we're fighting, but it's the power structures that we want to see change. And I believe we definitely need change on our politics in this country on both sides, and definitely our religion. I feel like religion has lost a lot of ground, and I think that may be because we've often forgotten about the other, or that we sometimes other people because they think they're the others, and then you don't know. You know, we just exclude, rather than trying to find how do we get unity through diversity. How do we actually really practice inclusion that's not easy inclusion, that's really tough inclusion. I've met with different pastors in this city, you know, and I only have one that really still hangs, still wants to talk with me and meet with me. You know what I mean? It's like, that's just the reality we live in. Um, you know, I don't have any really very much contact with the communities that I was part of most of my life, you know, because often we forget about each other, or we move on, or we just don't want to do the trouble. And that's painful too. That's really painful as well. You know, it's painful to be ignored, and to have your work ignored, and to have really, like, you worked your whole life to just be ignored by those people that you loved and looked up to. You know, I get it. So I just want to say, you're not alone in your suffering. And it's understandable. And for you, of those who are confused about, you know, why the people on the left are so grieving so much, you know, talk to them. Talk to each other. Find someone who you know maybe is a friend, or someone you care about, or someone, and just say, can we talk about this? Let me tell you why I'm scared, and what's going on. You know, anyway, I know this talk is probably a little bit too soon for all that, but I just want to say, don't give up. This is what we've been training for. You know, I saw people put up this app on this meme of Joe Strummer from The Clash, and he says, you know, this is punk rock time. This is what we've been training for. This is what Joe Strummer taught us about. You know, so I want to say, like, this is what Dr. King is ready us for. This is what people like John Hume, people like that, you know, this is what Jay Baker has been talking to you about for like 6 years. This is what we've been preparing for, is how we can work together in a divided group, how we can bring division and come together, how we can have tough conversations, how we can find unity through diversity, how we can rise above this, how we can take the narrow road, the road less traveled, and we can try to do this together. I'm doing a Q&A as well that will be released on Sunday here as well, so check that out. Maybe we'll talk some about that. I love you guys so much. I want to say, you know, we're going to get through this, and we're a community who tries to practice diversity. So please, in the comments and stuff, this is not a live talk right now. I didn't feel like I was ready to give a live talk, but please remember to treat each other with love and respect and grace, and disagree well. And, you know, take a little time off the old social media. I mean, it's just a shit show right now. And, listen to some music you love. Watch a film that moves you. I watched Casablanca the other night, you know, and I love that film, and it really moves me, and it was great. And then I watched The Dark Knight Rises, because some reason I love that Bane voice. Everybody else hated it, but I was like, I want to hear it in my ears. So, yeah, it seems impossible. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this video is turned off halfway through it. So if you're still here, thanks for sticking with me. But man, you know, it feels pretty impossible, just because I'm seeing so many people I care about and argue with each other and be so despaired, and you know, and it's like, ugh, you know, what do we do? But then I just remind myself, this is why you talk about this stuff, is because you saw this coming. You know, I mean, not maybe in this particular way, but I've seen this most of my life. So one day at a time, folks. Progress, not perfection. Love each other. It's the end of the year. November and December are always probably our toughest times, revolution. So if you love this work, care about this work, want to sow into this work and stand with us, you can go to revolutionchurch.com and make a donation. You can share this stuff with each other, and we will continue to work towards a better life for all humanity, and continue to have these conversations. And thank you for being part of Revolution. At this point, I hope it really is a revolution that includes nonviolence, but a revolution that is able to speak the truth within love and grace, not in passive aggressive ways, but in true honest love and grace and compassion for others. So guess what? The sun is going to shine again, and you can make it, and don't give up. You're on the brink of a miracle. All those things people don't want to hear. We stand on a foundation of grace that is anarchy. And now let's practice that. Let's practice a little anarchy. Let's practice a little grace in anarchy and see where that gets us. All right, everybody. See you soon. Hopefully we get some questions from you guys, and we'll be having that up here probably just following this talk. I'll probably post the Q&A after that. All right. Love you all. Grace, peace. Take care of one another. Feed yourself. Take a break from social media. Try to eat 3 meals a day and drink some good water. And I'm headed out on Tuesday to go see the premiere. So they do a preview of the Tammy Faye Broadway has been in previews this whole time. And during the previews, they change up the play. They see what works, what doesn't work. And then when the official premiere happens, that's the locked down play. So I will be again with Elton John and Dave Furnish and all these different folks celebrating my mother's life on Tuesday. And I hope that gives you hope that we celebrate people like my mom's life now, and people like Sinead O'Connor and people like that who speak the truth, and people who are able to walk, to be with, a Baptist church one day and then at a gay pride parade the next day singing the whole crowd, leading the whole crowd, and yes, Jesus loves me. I hope those are the type of things that encourage you. And I never realized that my mom's work would influence me so much, but I guess now it's needed more than ever. So folks, don't give up. I love you all very much, and I'm going to stick with you, and I hope you'll stick with me, because we're going to make it. And we'll do our best. Love you.